Hi, welcome to Courageous Journeys. You're tuned in to CentralValleyTalk.com, and today we are going to be breaking up our show. First, we have our guest, Lisa Keith, who will be discussing with us disorders that children are showing symptoms of early on and that can be worked with. Our guest she's a 20-year veteran teacher in special education from K through 12 here in the Central Valley. She's currently a professor of special education at Fresno Pacific and the director of their Moderate to Severe Disability Special Education Credential Program. She specializes in working with adolescents with emotional disturbances. She is the chair of the Board of Directors for Mental Health America of Central Valley, a nationwide mental health advocacy and educational organization. In addition to her teaching credentials, she has a master's degree in counseling psychology and is currently finishing her doctorate degree at California School of Professional Psychiatry, where she's writing her dissertation on mental illness, stigma, and coming out. And we've been talking a lot about that, coming clear with your letting people know what's going on with you so that they can help, and having mental illness in the workplace. So that's been her focus. Most recently, she wrote a proposal to the CCTC on behalf of Fresno Pacific for teaching credentials emphasizing work with emotionally disturbed children and youth. She's a consumer, a parent of a bipolar teen, and an educator. Welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
So Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about what originally inspired you to go into the field of working with people with disorders?
When I started working on my multiple subject credential, I had an opportunity to become a surrogate parent in special education. That is when a child in special education, their parent is not available, maybe they're in foster care or the parent is incarcerated or out of the picture. They need someone to step in and act as the parent at an IEP meeting. And so I was able to do some volunteer work, and I could really see the need for people to step up and advocate on behalf of these children.
That's wonderful. So you decided to go to direct your education in that direction?
Correct.
I've recently learned that there's a huge need for more professionals and more facilities with dealing with mental illness and disorders and all sorts of things that we're suffering from as a nation, for that matter. Please explain what type of learning or behavioral difficulties would be included in educating children with a mild to moderate disability.
Students with mild to moderate disability make up about 90% of our special education students, and that would include students who have specific learning disability, who have emotional disturbance, other health impairments like ADHD, for example.
Would be under the mild.
Correct.
Okay, and then when you, that versus the severe disabilities, how would you define the severe disabilities with working with children?
Students with severe disabilities are students that are going to need lifelong care or assistance to be successful in the community. These are students who have autism, who have cerebral palsy, who have maybe developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities, and those types of disabilities.
And so in being the director of the educational program under both of these categories, is there a difference in the level of education that the teacher or a future teacher has to take, or is it just they're directed in another area of specialty?
Some of the coursework is different. We focus for Mod Severe, we focus on things such as the MOVE curriculum and how to assist students to be mobile in their environment. We look at different types of transition. We look at different types of learning strategies and teaching strategies.
So when you say mobile, I'm assuming you're talking about physical activity with mental. What do you mean, how to be mobile?
So students who have, say, a physical handicap, we may help them learn how to transition from their chair to their wheelchair to a chair at a dinner table to share dinner with a family.
Okay.
So they can be part of the group.
Okay, so they are helping with those kind of things too. That's wonderful to hear. So to basically navigate their environment.
Correct.
Or the changing environment.
Yeah.
And how to get around. Which symptoms or difficulties, in addition So autism, where does things like bipolar fall in? Would that be considered severe or moderate?
Well, I consider it more on the severe side, but technically it's in the mild-moderate range. These are disabilities that are very often served in general education classrooms because they're cyclical. And so students will go into periods of remission and then come out and cycle back into their illness, and they move in and out. It's very fluid.
So the fact that they may or may not need medication does not play a role in where they're placed?
Correct.
That's
Correct.
interesting.
Yes.
You would think that it would in some cases just because of the brain chemistry, but they're not looking at that as far as...
They're not looking at that because families can choose not to medicate. It really is a family choice and a family decision.
That's interesting. Under the age of 18.
Correct.
So you are teaching others to teach with all children in high school level?
I work with teacher candidates
Right.
who are going to be teaching from preschool all the way up to 12th grade.
Okay, so they're all under the age of 18 because you face a whole new set of challenges when you're dealing with an official adult who really might not have the skills of an adult,
Right.
unfortunately. What does it mean to have emotional disturbances? What made you decide to focus on adolescents with emotional disturbances?
I had the opportunity about 1997 to start a program at a local high school here in town. There had never been one before at this high school, and I had the opportunity to move from middle school to high school, and I really wanted to do that. I didn't know what I was getting into. And I just fell in love with these children who really needed someone to believe in them and to care about them and to nurture them in the classroom environment.
I brought up, speaking of that, with the older children on a previous program that in San Francisco in some of the school districts, they attach an educator with a child who might have, for instance, autism. And that adult stays with them, and helps them to navigate through their classes and stay on track. But I learned that we don't have anything like that here. Now, obviously, that could create some codependency with, an attachment to a particular adult. But my aunt, who works in that field, said in dealing with adolescents, you're talking about somebody who could be towering over you. So you have a whole new set of...
That's right.
Dangers and things too, right?
And teenagers typically don't want someone, even if maybe they find that there's a need, they don't want someone trailing around at school.
They're struggling for their independence.
That's correct,
regardless of whether or not they have. And have you
seen an increase in these areas of need? Definitely. When I first began teaching in the classroom for students with emotional disabilities, I had maybe 4 or 5 students, and after 10 years of working in that area, class sizes were closer to from 15 to 20.
Wow.
And from what I understand this year, they really are large, especially classes for emotional disturbance and autism, both.
That's got to be an extreme challenge for the educators because, even working with children that are, high functioning, the more children, the more you're pulled in different directions. So,
especially when you're trying to mainstream them so that they have as normal an experience as possible at the high school level, you have to be in more than one place at a time.
Right. What are your observations with regards to increase in diagnosis versus the quality of professional and programs that are out there that cater? Because I'm seeing a big need.
Yes.
What are your observations with that?
There really aren't that many people here in the Valley, psychiatrists, therapists, that work with adolescents and children. It's really an underserved population. There are a few people that do see that age group, but for the most part, we really have a huge need. And we don't have a psychiatric facility here in Fresno. So when children do need to be hospitalized, they're traveling 3 or 4 hours to get care.
To the Bay Area is what I heard, or Southern
Ventura
California.
or Southern California.
Yeah, that's
yes.
very challenging. And then for the families, how do they assist in being their network of support when you're talking such great distances? So do you believe that the lack of professionals going into the adolescent stages is because they need further education, or is there a fear on the part of the teacher, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think there is a lack of education. Excuse me.
There's some water there.
Oh, thank you. Many of the programs that are focused on students with autism, it's that part of the population is more vocal, so they're becoming more and more programs and teaching strategies for those children. But for children with emotional and social disabilities, there still is not as much out there. People
Right.
don't want to talk about it. So
Yeah, and I'm learning that as soon as I started focusing on mental illness and disorders, the Facebook comments got less and less. It's like there's a fear, there's a stigma, but people are communicating on a private level. So I
Definitely.
commend all of you out there who are, opening up about either living with somebody and supporting them, or you yourself living with a disorder, because it's challenging, but it's doable. And the more
It's
help
very
you get,
doable.
the easier it is, right?
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Something interesting that I learned in a previous interview was also that in certain communities, and that's kind of what I was hoping you might have some knowledge about, because I'm dying to know. I know they're doing research, but in some communities that are very tight-knit communities, like the Amish community, they have a much lower percentage of things like autism. Do you have any knowledge based around that, or?
I haven't heard about that in say something like the Amish community, but I do know that it tends to be and Caucasian there's more prevalence in Caucasian communities than say Hispanic communities or the African American community.
That's really interesting, and I'm glad they're doing a lot of research. We are going to cut for commercial, and we'll be right back with you. Thanks for tuning in.
This segment has been brought to you by Horn Photo in the Bellagio at River Park. For all of your photo and camera needs, go to Horn Photo in the Bellagio at River Park.
Family photos tell your stories. Faces, places, milestones, and moments. You probably meant to preserve those memories. But where are those pictures now? Hiding in boxes or inside the discoloring pages of old albums? Do you own hours of home movies and videotapes that you can't even watch? Slides and negatives that you've saved for all these years and never get to see? Think of all those precious memories that you've saved from the past to share with the future. Thanks to technology, we're taking more photos than ever, but we're not printing them like we should. Those digital images are held hostage on phones, tablets, and hard drives, leaving them as high-risk targets for accidents and hardware failure. What will happen to all of these images that tell your life story? Cherish those captured memories, not by hiding them, but by safely saving them. Put this overwhelming task on your own agenda or enlist Horn Photo's expertise. Horn Photo provides hands-on help from day one with organizing, scanning, restoring, and duplicating photographs. We can digitize your print and video memories onto DVD for easy viewing and safe, efficient storage. All you need to do is gather your prints, slides, negatives, and videos, then bring them into Horn Photo, where we will care for your cherished memories. In most cases, you can pick up your originals and your DVD within a few days. Once everything is on DVD, it's easy and affordable to order copies of your DVD for your children, siblings, and the rest of your family, so that you can share your memories with everyone. The best part is what can happen once your memories are digitized. We will show you how to transform your pictures into keepsake photo gifts and products you can enjoy for years to come. Don't wait for a disaster to destroy your collection of memories. Take steps to sort, save, and share your life in photos, whether you do it yourself or have Horn Photo help. Stop into Horn Photo and see our full range of solutions for saving and sharing your precious memories.
You can advertise your business, your product, or your event on Central Valley Talk, the Valley's only internet television station. Several of our programs are also picked up on Dish and cable networks. For the best advertising dollar, call Central Valley Talk at 579-1360.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
You're tuned in to Courageous Journeys with me, Theodora Michelides, and I have today with me guest Lisa Keith, who's a professor at Fresno Pacific University here in Fresno. And we are discussing disorders with children. And you are a member of the board of directors with the American
Mental Health America of the Central Valley.
Of the Central Valley. And what do those duties include for you?
I actually have been with the organization for a little over a year, and recently became the chair of the board of directors. So we work with advocacy, we do peer support, we do trainings all over the Central Valley to assist in discussions centering around education and stigma reduction for those with mental health issues.
That's fantastic. I found on the website too that you have some really helpful, we're talking about adolescents, but even for adults that have a psychotic episode or whatever, and families going to seek information and documents to help them on that website, there's some forms and like booklets that they can print out, right?
Right. There's some crises intervention booklets that you can print out in several languages that will help you navigate your way, not only as a consumer, but if you're a loved one as well, and how to navigate some legal systems that you may come in contact with.
Yeah. Now, this wasn't one of the questions I gave you in advance, but as far as navigating legal systems, when you have a child and seeking out help, what would you say is the best resource for family members, parents out there to first seek out?
You need to seek out a good psychiatrist, because I think my experience has been that although many family doctors are very caring and know the child well, they just aren't up on medications, treatments, signs and symptoms of mental illness in young children.
Now, that can be challenging though. Like we just said, there is unfortunately a deficiency of professionals here in the Valley who are working in that area. So in finding somebody that not only has the skills, but that you can connect with,
right?
The child can connect with, the parents, feel comfortable with. That is a big challenge. So do you have any advice about that? Or
I think if you come up with a series of questions that you are interested in getting answered ahead of time, and don't be afraid to...
That's a good point. Write them out.
Write them out. And don't be afraid to try more than one physician or therapist or social worker until you find someone that you do connect with.
Yeah, as far as that goes, I know for our family, we had to go to a couple before we found somebody that the individual felt comfortable with.
Right.
So, but I love the idea of pre-writing, because I don't know about you guys out there, but when I am going to the doctor quite often, and I don't like being at the doctor, I forget all the symptoms that I've been thinking about for the last 2 months and just focus on what I'm feeling at that moment.
Right.
And then he doesn't know what else is going on with me. So having a journal or some notebook that you could take with you to not only ask those questions, but then also absorbing the information can be extremely challenging when you're nervous or whatever the situation is, to writing it down or taking another person with you who maybe is not emotional about the topic can be very helpful too. Right?
Yes.
Okay. As a professional, as a professor of special education at Fresno Pacific University, how many courses are you actually teaching?
Yes, I teach anywhere, depending on the semester, anywhere from 4 to 6 classes. I teach currently 2 classes face-to-face. I teach 2 classes in an online format.
Okay.
And then I have master's candidate students that I mentor, and we meet one Saturday a month and then as needed. So
you've got a full plate, and you're
it all.
working on your own, which is almost finished, which
Yes,
is great. I'm happy for
almost.
you, for sure. So in the program, you mentioned, and I mentioned to our viewers that you submitted a proposal. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that's all about?
Right. So the California Commission on Teaching Credentialing has released 6 new added authorizations to assist teachers who may have older credentials with becoming more trained on some of the more prevalent conditions. One of them happens to be for emotional disturbance. So teachers who have older credentials can come to Fresno Pacific and can get training. It's a 12-unit program, and either become certified with an added authorization through CCTC, or if they have a newer credential and they want to specialize in emotional disturbance, they can get a Fresno Pacific University certificate in.
So are they accepting that proposal then? Is that going to go into?
It's being read right now, and so we're hoping to start in the spring. Yeah,
That'd be great. There is a, Bill, there is a website there for Pacific. Is it on this segment? Okay, yeah. Our technician is going to put the website address for Fresno Pacific University. Sorry, I have my own dyslexia problem. So that our viewers can find out more about that. Obviously, they may already know how to contact, but I noticed that there's a lot of information on there as to what the courses might, involve. Or, and you mentioned that you're doing online courses. Is that pretty typical in this? Because some fields you can't take online courses, but for psychiatry and psychology you can.
For the teacher education,
okay.
right,
Portion
you can.
of it.
Some of we have about 12 different programs that we run for credentialing, and some of them are totally online, and then the newer programs, the preliminary credentials, are a combination of traditional face-to-face coursework, blended half online, half face-to-face, and then there are some online classes as well.
That's fabulous, especially for people who are already, living their career or trying to transition, to be able to do it at their own time.
Right, and we reach a lot of people in the outlying areas who
sure.
can't drive in to Fresno.
Yeah, with the online courses.
Correct. Yeah.
I found it shocking in doing studying through this whole month on focusing on disorders and mental illness that we're looking at 26.2% of adult Americans experiencing some sort of health challenge and mental disorder, which actually quite often shows itself before the age of 14. Are those numbers true, or have they been updated, or do you know anything about those statistics?
It is about 1 in 5 right now is the latest statistic. Americans will have or has a mental health issue in their lifetime.
So 1 in 5 is a lot higher than 26%.
It's a high number.
It's a high
yes.
number. That's we do have a short clip that we're going to show you about awareness. That's during this segment here, right? So we're going to cut to that, and we'll be right back.
The All-American healthcare system, there is coverage for heart health, care for cancer.
But the All-American brain is getting lost in the shuffle.
Brain tumor, fine. Brain disease, not so fine.
The all-American brain deserves better.
There's no stigma or discrimination against the heart, the liver, the kidney, even the gallbladder. Doesn't even have a job.
Yesterday, depression was kept in the dark.
And bipolar disorder was your best friend's mother's problem.
But the tide is turning.
It's cool to be out there.
We're coming out.
Why is mental disease the only illness you can get yelled at for having?
The brain is just as important as any other body part.
You're not alone.
It's not your fault.
You're as sick as your secrets.
Talk to someone.
Wear it proud.
Our goal is to make the discussion of mental dis-ease cool and trendy.
Let's tear down the stigma surrounding mental illness.
I'm mad about feeling good.
No kidding. Me too.
No kidding.
Me too.
It's time we gave the all-American brain some peace of mind.
Hi, and welcome back to Courageous Journeys. So I love that piece that you had suggested because it really shares the fact that the brain is like any other organ. And
That's right.
Unfortunately, people do not treat a mental illness or a disorder over the centuries like another organ. Mm-hmm. There's these stigmas, and there's a shame factor and a fear factor that play a role in that, even when family members, not even when, but family members have, unfortunately, the tendency through any kind of major shameful illness or event that's occurred in their family, instead of bringing it out to work together to help either the individual or stop the abuse, they're trying to shove it behind closed doors. What kind of things have you seen families, or how do you advise families on that, on getting beyond that and bringing it out into the open? Do you have any advice on that?
Getting a lot of support. We have, for example, through Mental Health America, a parent support group and a peer support group.
Is that listed? I didn't find
Yes,
that
it's on the website.
Okay, on the Mental Health America website.
On the Mental Health America website. And I think once you start to talk about it, you'll find that people will start to share, oh, I have an uncle, or I have a brother, or someone that they know, or them personally that have had issues, and it becomes, it's really a normal part of life that people have chronic illnesses.
And then, I mean, for me, that's, and I shared that with you before we started, for me, a big part of, ooh, my hearing just went off, doing this program is helping people to allow themselves to be vulnerable and transparent. You know, even starting out with people close to you, but talking about those things, because you do realize that you're not alone. And by those numbers we just mentioned, you're definitely not alone. It's affecting every family out there, pretty much, almost every family.
That's right.
In some way or another. And you might not even realize, because in past, the diagnosis process was not what it needed to be, and people were just, you know, for instance, not understanding that maybe the adult had this disorder, and then the abuse that they were creating for the generations down the line. It is a generational thing,
Right.
you know.
Right. And the interesting thing is that most people with mental illness are the victims of abuse and crime, rather than the perpetrators of victims of crimes and abuse.
Well, they're so vulnerable.
Yes, very much
Quite
so.
often, and depending on what the situation is, like I said in another program, and the psychiatrist said, is that the anxiety and the fear that they're going through, and trying to, one, possibly put on a normal face,
or pass, as we like to say.
pass
Mm-hmm.
for normal.
Pass as normal.
Or also have delusions or paranoia. This can cause great anxiety and fear for them. So, you know, if you have a loved one or it's yourself, do your best to, with loving understanding, to try and help them come to terms with that and take medications and whatnot. Unfortunately, we have another commercial break, but we'll be right back. Thank you for tuning in.
This segment's brought to you by Tioga Sequoia Brewery. Central Valley Talk is fueled by Tioga Sequoia Brewery in downtown Fresno.
Watch Tim Thiessen live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. right here on CentralValleyTalk.com and on digital channel 33.2. If you missed the live broadcast, we're on every Wednesday night at 11 p.m. on Comcast channel 200 and digital channel 43.5. You don't want to miss this.
Hey, my name is Chris DeVold, and I am host of one of CentralValleyTalk.com's hottest new shows, Sex, Drugs, and Chris DeVold, where we sit around for an hour and read the Bible. No, we don't. You think with a name like Sex, Drugs, and Chris DeVold, that's what we're doing? No. We sit around, we talk about lewd topics, we drink beer, and I vow to bring you one local live musician every friggin' week. You can count on that. So grab your best friend, come to the studio or watch from home, and get ready to blush every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. on Sex, Drugs, and Chris DeVold.
This just in. Tower District houses are selling for as little as $300 per month. If you have a job and decent credit, you can own your own home. If you can come up with a down payment, you can own a home a lot cheaper than you can rent, and your payment will never go up. Also, you could deduct most of your house payment from your income taxes. If you'd like to lock in your monthly house payment at $300 to $500 per month for the next 30 years, call Mike Briggs Properties, 486-6758. Mike Briggs Properties, 486-6758.
Own it all at Owner Car Fresno.
I'm the owner and CEO of Central Valley Talk. We produce live programs that broadcast 24 hours per day on the internet website, CentralValleyTalk.com. If you like local talk radio, you'll love CentralValleyTalk.com.
Ag is a vital part of the economy here in the Central Valley. Hi, I'm Ty Simpson, sales manager of the new Bland Solar office here in Clovis.
And if you're in the ag industry, you've probably given thought to solar. Whether you run a dairy, orchard, farm, or ranch, at Bland Solar, we can custom design a system that's perfect for your business. The fact is that in this economy, replacing high-cost utility power with solar power is a great way to improve your bottom line. Bland Solar looks forward to serving the residents of the Central Valley. So call us today at 554-5657. Bland Solar, the Valley's expert in solar.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to Courageous Journeys with me, Theodora Michelides. I have here today with me Lisa, as I mentioned earlier, and we are discussing children and adolescents with disorders and difficulties in school. Lisa, speaking of people in education, and if someone comes to you either as a student already at the university or in high school and says that they're contemplating specializing in working with children with special needs, what would be your advice to them?
There's several avenues that they can take. One would be to get out and volunteer, to actually find a nonprofit like Exceptional Parents Unlimited or United Cerebral Palsy and find out ways to volunteer and contribute their time to the community. Another way is to come down to Fresno Pacific and talk to me and find out what are the options, what are the programs that are offered, and see that. And the other would be, again, to do what I did, which is to become a surrogate parent for the district near them.
Well, actually spending time volunteering in something that you're contemplating, a lot of times it can change your mind, or it can make you very passionate about really doing that, to reinforce what you believe you want to do. So I think that's wise advice. Now, here in the Fresno area, obviously there's people that watch this program that are way beyond Fresno, all over the U.S. and abroad, but here locally, which universities can they, other than obviously Fresno Pacific, is Fresno Pacific the only one offering this degree? And
teaching credentials can be obtained either at Fresno State or Fresno Pacific. We are going to be the only ones in this area to offer the emotional disturbance added authorization. And we're also going to be hopefully adding at the same time an added authorization for adaptive PE. So we do have some things in the hopper that are unique to Fresno Pacific.
But that person could come just for that certification. They wouldn't have to do their entire degree there, or do
Correct.
They have to? Okay, because I know with some universities you have to redo your general ed or whatever.
Right, no.
Not so much at that level, but I noticed transferring from junior college or lower colleges to some universities, they're very particular about that. So, but that's not the case. So those out there that are already in the field will be able to come to Fresno Pacific. I've heard wonderful things about the staff at Fresno Pacific.
It's a wonderful place to work. I'm really blessed, yes.
And how long have you been working there?
This is actually only my second year. I've just come out of public ed, this has been a wonderful opportunity to work with them and to design this added authorization. Yeah,
because you yourself were working with the K through 12,
right?
And then you now are teaching people.
I started in kindergarten, and it's interesting because as my children got older, I moved up in grade. Now they're all in college, and here I am in college. So.
But that's very helpful to them too in your experiences with seeing what happens at home, right? And the mentality, because as we work through the different developmental stages, we all remember what we were like, but seeing what they go through here and now is, I think, a very useful tool for you.
Yes.
I would imagine. Personal challenges for you in being a parent, because you did mention that you have a teen who lives with bipolar disorder. What are some of the personal challenges that your family faces?
I think it's always difficult when your child is in pain to watch that. Libby began cutting, and that was extremely difficult to not become angry at her, but to handle the feelings that surround the illness and to cope with those types of things. So that's the hardest part. And then to assure that she has good quality care. So I think the more you educate yourself about the different medications that are out there, the different types of therapy and medical treatment that's available.
And the side effects.
Absolutely.
Because, so I've learned from some of our other guests, getting the right cocktail of medications is challenging at times too, especially when you're talking about comorbidity and different disorders At the same
Yes.
time, if you're trying to treat one, you think that that may be the problem, and then you're sending the individual into a psychotic episode. That can be very challenging. I don't want to get too much into personal life, but was the cutting one of the red flags for you, or was that after?
It definitely was a red flag for me. I knew she wasn't well. She began having somatic symptoms.
What's somatic symptoms?
Symptoms that she was experiencing stomach aches, headaches, not wanting to go to school. She was sick a lot. She was throwing up before school in the morning. A lot of anxiety. Her personality changed. Her behavior changed. She went from a very happy, outgoing young woman to being very depressed and crying a lot and withdrawn.
Now, with hormones as women, and I tried to cover this with one of the psychiatrists, but I don't know, the question went over his head. When dealing with hormones, and some women over others have a real up and down of hormones related to their cycle, which can cause depression, or then afterwards you feel more elated. Can people not see the symptoms because of things like that? They think, oh, she's just being hormonal? Because that's my concern.
Absolutely, especially in more milder forms of bipolar 2, for example, where it's hypomania versus a full-blown mania. But the people with bipolar disorder, the behavior is really extreme, so it becomes really obvious that there's something different.
And the ones that don't have really obvious symptoms sometimes fall between the cracks.
That's true.
And that's when you're getting individuals who are diagnosed at a lot later stage in life. So let's talk about, because we're going to run out of time, I'm going to skip a couple things. Let's talk about those red flags of symptoms or things that parents, because there's a current commercial, and my son was laughing. I said it's really no laughing matter, but there's a commercial on right now on the radio station talking about drug use and children's behavior, and some of the things they're saying could be bipolar disorder, they could be manic depression. So talk to us about red flags, because it doesn't necessarily mean your kid's on drugs if they're doing these things.
Right. Red flags would be a lack of hygiene, and that can be typical in a teenager. But very often, very often, if a child suddenly stops bathing, their eating habits change drastically. They stop eating. They stay up at night where they can't sleep, or they're overly active, or they have grandiose or sensation-seeking behaviors where they wouldn't before. Those would be things to look
I'm sorry,
for.
but would you define that last thing you mentioned?
Right. So sensation seeking would be doing things that give you a rush, that are maybe far above what normal teenage behavior would be. So rather than just going to the skate park and getting a rush from skating through the skate park, it would be doing something like riding on the back of a car on a skateboard. Something like that might be a red flag.
I think my kids wanted to do that from very early. So, but an extreme jump up in the level of danger.
So you need to know your child, yes.
Yeah, and be paying attention if you're able to know that, or talking to their friends. Anything else that they should? I mean, we talked about food. We talked about hygiene and increasing the level of activity of doing things that could cause danger to them. Anything else that you'd like to bring up as far as a red flag behavior?
I think that it's important that we talk to our children regularly, that we have conversations about everyday things, and I think the more we know our children, the easier it will be to identify something that's out of the norm for them.
Yeah, out of the norm. Well, and with teenagers, I gotta imagine that's challenging, because a lot of teenagers, fortunately mine talk to me most of the time, but a lot of times teenagers start shutting down. They're, struggling for their own independence, and they're trying to find themselves, and the hormones are racking them. So keeping that communication open is just, regardless of anything going on with your kid, is a huge challenge.
And modeling for your children how you handle anger, how do you handle frustration.
That's
that it's
huge.
okay to be angry, but it's how you handle the anger that is what's important.
Right. And that, on that note, I just want to say something that modeling for your children and changing possibly generational ways of reacting to situations is not easy. If you've grown up in an abusive family or something like that, it's critical. And I'm speaking from my own personal experience of when I had my first child. It was a huge challenge for me to learn how to yeah, it's not that I wasn't compassionate, but I had these issues with people crying just because adults would cry on my shoulder and I had to be the adult, that when having my first child, then not reacting in a push away or an angry way when you get upset of something, no physical, reaction, but a talking one. You can do it. I don't like to hear when people use that excuse of, well, that's what my parents did. No, you can change the cycle.
You can.
And people getting in touch with you, I want to make sure I don't ramble on too far, to be able to find out more about programs that are you comfortable with that, or should they?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you would like them to do that via your email address?
Email would be the best way to reach me.
Okay. And do we have that up? No. Lisa's email address is Lisa, and do they need to put in the capitals?
No capitals.
Go. You want to say
it's
it?
Lisa.Keith, Keith, at Fresno.edu.
So if you have any questions about getting involved in working with children with special needs or adolescents, you can definitely contact her and find out more about the program, or also visit the website for Fresno Pacific University, and if you're a family dealing with these issues, the resources on say that again for me,
Mental Health America, Central Valley.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources on that website, forms, textbooks, different types of things.
Websites and local providers.
Really quickly before we close, I want to talk about support groups. Are there any you would suggest? You mentioned parents, but how do they find out? Is that on the website too?
Yes, there is actually a handbook of local providers that
they can print off?
That they can print out. It's a PDF.
Awesome.
And it lists all of the different psychiatrists, different therapists, support groups, organizations that you can look
I be able to, and this might be a legal thing, but can you find out if I can copy that PDF or something to be able to provide that on my program, or?
I can find out for you.
Okay,
yeah.
That'd be great, so that I can provide that on some of them. Because sometimes people forget the websites if they're just listening. Also, they don't see what it is. Thank you so much to our guest. I appreciate what you're doing in the community and the sacrifice and the joy that you are getting out of helping people.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I look forward to hopefully having you back and talking more about this, but thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back shortly with an individual who's a longtime friend, and she'll be discussing living with a family member with schizophrenia. Thank you for tuning in.
This segment is brought to you by Mike Briggs Properties. For all of your real estate needs in Fresno and the Valley, call Mike Briggs Properties, located in Fresno's historic Tower District.
Family photos tell your stories. Faces, places, milestones, and moments. You probably meant to preserve those memories. But where are those pictures now? Hiding in boxes or inside the discoloring pages of old albums? Do you own hours of home movies and videotapes that you can't even watch? Slides and negatives that you've saved for all these years and you never get to see? Think of all those precious memories that you've saved from the past to share with the future. Thanks to technology, we're taking more photos than ever, but we're not printing them like we should. Those digital images are held hostage on phones, tablets, and hard drives, leaving them as high-risk targets for accidents and hardware failure. What will happen to all of these images that tell your life story? Cherish those captured memories, not by hiding them, but by safely saving them. Put this overwhelming task on your own agenda or enlist Horn Photo's expertise. Horn Photo provides hands-on help from day one with organizing, scanning, restoring, and duplicating photographs. We can digitize your print and video memories onto DVD for easy viewing and safe, efficient storage. All you need to do is gather your prints, slides, negatives, and videos, then bring them into Horn Photo, where we will care for your cherished memories. In most cases, you can pick up your originals and your DVD within a few days. Once everything is on DVD, it's easy and affordable to order copies of your DVD for your children, siblings, and the rest of your family, so that you can share your memories with everyone. The best part is what can happen once your memories are digitized. We will show you how to transform your pictures into keepsake photo gifts and products you can enjoy for years to come. Don't wait for a disaster to destroy your collection of memories. Take steps to sort, save, and share your life in photos, whether you do it yourself or have Horn Photo help. Stop into Horn Photo and see our full range of solutions for saving and sharing your precious memories.
Watch Tim Thiessen live Wednesdays at 3 p.m. right here on CentralValleyTalk.com and on digital channel 33.2. If you missed the live broadcast, we're on every Wednesday night at 11 p.m. on Comcast Channel 200 and digital channel 43.5. You don't want to miss this.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Hi, we are here today at Courageous Journeys with me, Theodora Michelides, and my next guest has so graciously agreed to speak about her years in living with an ex-husband and father to her 4 adult children, who suffers from schizophrenia type diagnosis. We're not quite sure if it is full diagnosed as a schizophrenic, because as we mentioned earlier in programming, when an individual is over the age of 18, you may or may not have access to their medical records. So I am extremely grateful that she is courageous in sharing some of those intimacies, and I know that there's still a lot of pain around the subject. So thank you so much. I'm going to give you a hug.
Thank you
for being here today and sharing, how it is to live in that situation. How many years were you married that the spouse was suffering from symptoms?
Well, altogether, I was married for 24 years, and there were subtle little hints that there was something going on with him. Probably 2 years into my being married to him. Yeah, and then I started seeing some peculiar behavior about 10 years into the marriage.
Further in. Now, I know the two of you got married, though, like early 20s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which would make sense because with quite often, not always, as we just learned, sometimes symptoms show themselves around 14, but most young people really start showing symptoms in their early 20s, and then into the 30s it becomes more significant, the type of psychotic events. So you married this beautiful young man, and then into your marriage started seeing some signs of some things going on. Yeah.
Yes, gradually things, there were, like I said, subtle little quirky things that I thought, well, that's just having a bad day, or I would try to, I've always been pretty positive and loving, and so I was, just letting him have his space if he needed it, because I was noticing some moodiness, and but then it just, like you had mentioned, it started to get progressively worse as
and
the
more
years
prevalent,
and
right?
more prevalent. And there were cycles in the way his behavior was.
Did you see those cycles of, as we mentioned in previous programs, with the depression and then the psychotic type, or the manic rather, behavior?
Yes, he actually pulled off some really amazing things with his. He seemed to have, he was very intelligent, and
it doesn't affect the level of intelligence,
right? And so I was just thinking that this is a brilliant mind, and he's got some gifts that I was just going to support, but then there was times when he was very withdrawn and became difficult to communicate with.
Now, we mentioned that you do have 4 adult children now. How old were the children when you started, really noticing some behavior that affected family life and personal life?
I would say my oldest daughter was still in grammar school, and middle school, because our school was all the way till 8th grade. So she was in 8th grade, my oldest, and my youngest one would have been just like an infant, 7 months old.
Now, as you mentioned, you thought that these gifts, he needed space or this or that and the other. Did you find yourself, and quite often we slip into this kind of behavior without really realizing it, but did you find yourself doing codependent type behavior in hiding things or making your lives more private?
Absolutely. I was petrified that we would be found out, that there was going to be someone who heard him say something that would embarrass us. And quite often he would act out in public, but like at a grocery store or something.
Not necessarily with friends or...
Not necessarily with friends.
Acquaintances.
Right.
Did that limit your own social activities, I would imagine?
Absolutely. I never felt comfortable enough to have anyone over for fear that he would have an episode. And not only would it have been embarrassing, but it would also have been very alarming, and I wouldn't want a friend to be
subjected
frightened.
To that. Yeah.
Yes, subjected.
Now, I know what a social and loving person you are, and that must have been very hard for your own growth and development too. I know for me, I love to be around people, and when you find yourself being isolated, which is what you did, that's very difficult. Now, in protecting behind closed doors, in protecting your own children from, or rather limiting the effects of his behavior on them, what kind of things were you able to do, or were you able to wrap your mind around being able to help them with what his behavior? Because they'd have to notice themselves as they got older that there's something wrong.
And that was what they did. As they got older, they noticed that there was something wrong. But prior to that, I was able to really be the Disneyland mom. I would have birthday parties at for them. At the zoo, or just make it like away from the home mostly. There was a time when he wouldn't come out of the bedroom, so he would be in the bedroom for days, and he would only come out to eat, or he didn't really want to socialize with the girls or with our friends or anything. So with their friends, so that's when I would have like a party, and I would know that he would never come out of the bedroom, so I could.
When he was in the depression stage,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I am so proud of you that you were. She's such a good mother, and trying to help children understand any kind of dysfunctional behavior and not affecting their lives to the point where they then become dysfunctional in their own relationships with the opposite sex or whatever. That's huge. That's huge. And I'm sure you're kind of still fearful that, it affects them.
It definitely has affected all of us. I mean, it's certainly going to affect the girls, because I didn't have a normal marriage, and they saw how I interacted with him, and it was mostly that we were kind of a roommate type situation. There was hardly no exchange of
hugs and kisses,
yeah.
And intimate behavior.
Yeah, that was one thing he did not like, is to be touched, to be, hugged, or he would always pull away if we tried to hug him, and so that was hard, and they saw that, and so
they didn't understand that.
That was our normal, and it was not normal, but it became our normal.
Well, and even with individuals suffering from depression from other illnesses, like for my family, when my husband was recovering from cancer, he became very no touchy, no talky for a while, but fortunately came out of that. You were hiding that from the outside world, but with family? Were you also hiding it from family members like parents and sisters and?
They, of course, were my family, my parents and his family, his aunts and uncles. But they knew about it, and my parents didn't understand it. They just thought that his behavior he was doing it on purpose, because they felt that he wasn't living up to their expectations for being a son-in-law and a husband to me and a father to their grandchildren. So there were challenges. There was a lot of pain. A lot of he would act out at when we would have family gatherings, like for Thanksgiving and Christmas, mostly holidays. He couldn't handle the anxiety of being around them, the people, any people.
Now, I never asked you about this before, but did you try and learn or do research as to how you could help yourself or help him?
Well, the first thing was I didn't really know what was going on with him. I did not have the skills to recognize it.
Right.
And
those flags, those symptoms.
Yeah, I just thought that this is just a difficult person, and this is how he was, and I was married to him, so it was my. I didn't believe in divorce at the time, and so I had to kind of put up with a lot, but. There was a time when I did start to hear what he was saying, and I decided that, okay, we need to get professional help for him. And of course,
what happened when you did that?
He would not cooperate with that at all. He didn't think anything was wrong with him, and he was not willing at all to help himself because he didn't think there was anything wrong.
Right. Well, that delusional behavior, unfortunately, is one of the biggest problems in dealing with an adult who has schizophrenia or bipolar, is that they have to accept the fact that they need help, and quite often they don't. And so there are a lot of homeless people out there. There's a lot of people in prisons right now that all they really needed was professional and medical treatment, and unfortunately our system is such that it's not available in many cases, or like Mina just shared, quite often we don't realize what the symptoms are. So that's why I want to make it clear on every one of these programs that we're talking about mental illness and disorders, that that you're aware of the red flags. So if something like this is going on with your loved one, or yourself for that matter, you get some help, and find out what those resources are. So once again, I really appreciate your time. I wanted to throw that out there before we close for the day, that in producing this program, I would like you to feel comfortable as viewers to call me or to email me and suggest topics that you are touched, your lives are touched by, and that you'd like us to cover on this program. So you can do that by emailing me at t.michaelides, MICHAILIDES, at sbcglobal.net, or you can feel free to call our office at 559-801-9504, and I would be happy to find out if I can get a specialist on our program to talk about that. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.
CentralValleyTalk.com